anyone listening, take a moment in silence and just be like, what has been kind of whirling around your mind that you're a little afraid of? Go do it. Yeah. Like it's as simple as that. Like it's not, you don't need to go reverse engineer the greatest thing of going to the jungle or traveling the globe or launching a company. Maybe that's the thing. It might just be, a lot of the times it's a lot more, maybe it's having the convo that you're scared to have with your girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Say the thing that's actually on your heart and go say that and see what happens.
Dude, you are a phenomenal human being, first of all. Like, and the way I can tell that is somebody's peace and presence. And that was one of the first things I noticed when I watched your interview with Peter Crone. I was like, wow, I've watched every single Peter Crone interview on the internet, and yours was my favorite. And I'm looking for how somebody interviews, how somebody interacts with the guest, and how they're able to flow with the conversation. And I'm like, wow, this man has a gift for interviewing. And if you have a gift for interviewing, it's likely because you've done the work to gain some peace and presence in your own life way before the interview. So I just, first of all, want to commend you.
Dude, I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you.
Yeah. So I guess a good place to start for this episode would be with the near-death experience. What happened?
Yeah, it's actually very funny, like full circle, as we're having this convo. So the accident happened. My speech is a little funny right now because I just got all my teeth removed.
Oh, wow.
On the bottom of my mouth from the accident. This is a lingering effect from that accident. They finally pulled my teeth out and I'm going to have to get implants in. So it's funny that this just happened over like 2 weeks ago, had the surgery. So it's been full circle. It's been very at the front of my mind. But yeah, this it's become obviously a massive part of my journey. It was about 10 years ago. I was in Thailand with my best friend, and we were in Koh Samui, it was Koh Phangan, night before New Year's Eve. We'd gone out for a trip, kind of our first time. I had traveled a lot internationally. It was his first real international trip, and we just had this special time, and it was got on a motorbike. It was the night before New Year's Eve. I remember it was one of the greatest days of my life. It was like I was so free. It was like one of those things, like on this trip, I just felt life was all in front of me. So free on this island with my best friend, just like young and just excited. And I remember we were like, okay, let's call it a night. We were going to go to our little bungalow and got on my little moped, hit the turn. Don't really remember much after that. I had a light. I saw a light coming at me. I heard some sounds. And next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed it was like a clinic in Koh Phangan, and ultimately ended up having basically a head-on collision. We're not quite sure what happened, but how the injuries laid out. Basically, my head went straight into my handlebars and completely shattered my jaw in two. Was completely knocked out for, don't really have a memory, for about 45 minutes. And then the journey began. And then they had to get me, it was that night, they had to speedboat me to Koh Samui, because that's actually where they had a hospital. And I remember that night, them taking me over on the speedboat. Well, they first took me from the northern part of the island of Koh Phangan down to the south part. And we were in an ambulance and driving down. And I was on the bed, heading to the docks to get on a speedboat. And it was like the night before New Year's Eve. So it was chaos down there. Koh Phangan's a big party island. I remember people were like banging on the ambulance. My buddy's in the back with me, just kind of like, what the fuck is going on? In and out of consciousness, like just keep turning to him like, what happened? And he's like, we're in Koh Phangan. You had an accident. I'd be like, what? I'm in an accident? And then I would like pass out, and 2 minutes later I'd ask him the same question. And he's just, my jaw's hanging in two. And this is the situation. And so then we finally get on the boat, and I remember I have fun memories of that boat. There was a storm that day, so there were waves. And so the woman, I remember this Thai woman was laying in her lap, and she was holding my head together. and we would hit a wake, and it would just like like my head would shake. And I remember I'd look up at like, it was the most interesting present boat ride. I remember falling in love with this woman, and I like wanted, the whole time I was like, I either want to propose to her, or I was hitting a wake and my jaw was shattering, because I'd never felt someone like so much like take care of me. And so, that was a 20-minute boat ride, and then, I didn't propose to her, and she went on with her life, and they checked me into the hospital, and then
would have been a cool story, though, if you proposed.
It would have been. It was, but I just remember her just like sweetness and kindness, and just like this woman just like literally holding my head together, and, got into the hospital that night, and there's just so many, ended up, they had to wait 48 hours due to the concussion, and then they finally did the surgery on me. It was basically like I wouldn't say a reconstructive surgery, but putting my jaw back together in two different areas. Ended up having an incredible surgeon that crushed it. I mean, Thailand's like a destination healthcare facility. So for dental, shoulder, knee, like it's a great place to go. Very affordable. Anyways, didn't know this at the time. They did the emergency surgery, and things turned out okay. But it was definitely like the beginning of a journey in life for me. It was definitely like a pinnacle moment, that from the moment that happened that night of being in the hospital in Koh Samui, like I knew this would be like I was excited for what was ahead of me. I was like, this is like a major chapter that it's either like embrace this, and it became that.
What changed after?
Accelerated life. I was in the hospital there for about 3 weeks, just doing nothing. And it was just all the things that I wanted to do. My life was good. It was a really good life. Like I was one that was proactive in a lot of things that I wanted to do. It accelerated what I wasn't proactive in, and things that I was like, like feeling young, and be like, you have the rest of your life to do that. This special moment of like, we're going to like jar that and realize like that's all an illusion.
How old were you?
27. I was 26, just about to turn 27. So, young, like how I perceive it. It was young, and it just accelerated. And the big one for me was at this time, this is back in 2012, about to be 2013. So 10 years ago.
Wow.
I had always wanted to go drink ayahuasca. And, now, again, it's a much more common thing now. And I didn't know anyone that had done it. I think I'd maybe heard of someone on Rogan's podcast or someone like that. I think it was Aubrey Marcus, probably like everyone. But I was like, that was the thing in life that was like, there's something so mysterious, and my curiosity was so rampant into like, I want to go down this road. But it was like, that's the great adventure that you'll do later in life. And it was literally like, in that hospital bed, I was like, above all else, you're going to do that immediately. Like, wow. You're going to heal this next year, and you're going to like dedicate your life to like getting your mind, your body, and your spirit right. And you're going to go all in, and you're going down to the jungle, and you're just going to dive into this. And that's what the next year was. And it was like, and life was such a special moment of like receiving life, because, when life gets special, synchronicities just start to show up in like the most profound way. And, that I look back at that year, and even the year after that, were the most synchronistic years of my life. And it was, to the point of, I was like, okay, I'm going to start floating, because I need to get my mind and my body right. Well, floating became the first business that I ever created. That led me to the float tank. I remember going from so my insurance in the hospital at the time, I had to pay a little out of pocket, because my insurance, it covered it, but they couldn't get the reimbursement in. But for them to let me out of the hospital, I actually had to pay the bill. So I paid it, came back to the States, go through my insurance. I get reimbursed, thankfully, and it comes back. Well, I remember, and it wasn't a ton amount of money, but I remember this was now months after. So I had now decided where I was going to go to the jungle. I'd found the place, done my research. I was like, this is where I'm going. And at this time back in 2012, I had to go, or 2013, excuse me, I had to go, like, there was no like credit card system to like pay online. It wasn't like the retreats that it is now. I had to go to the bank, actually wire money through this checking account. Like, and I remember it was like finally decided I'm going here. This is months after. I get a check the night of going to the bank the next day. It was all decided. I got a check that night before, almost verbatim for the dollar amount to go back to the jungle. So I took my check, went into the bank. I said, hey, I need to cash this. And can you send this to the Temple of the Way of Light? It was what this place was called. And they were like, what? It was like some Peruvian bank account. And it was, those were the signals that were just happening of just like, cool, like you've committed, like we got you, like here's your check. Like, and I have countless other stories like that, but those are the ones that just, that flow. And so that year I just prepped my mind and body and ended up going down and had, a truly another life-altering experience down there that was the next fuel to kind of the next parts of my life.
I want to get into that, but first, what do you think synchronicities are? What do you think they represent? And how do you think why do you think they've managed to appear so strongly in your life at that time?
I think they are there in every moment for us. I think that's just we can call them mysteries. There's probably an explainable force to it if we go deep enough down the rabbit hole of what we can't really understand and quantify. I do think there's a tuning of who we are that shows up at certain moments. Like when I'm very practical and I'm like in my day-to-day mode and I'm executing like that, I'm not really tapping into synchronicities. And it's not a right nor wrong. I just don't think they show up as much. When there's a bigger surrender to I'm not projecting out the future and I'm open to that unknown. I'm at the forefront, like what the present moment is and the blueprint is unknown. Magic can start to unfold. And it's there at all times. I just think there's different seasons of our life when we get presented to it. And, that accident was such a big jarring one that it shook me at my core, that it opened me up and kind of tuned me into, okay, let's say yes to that. I find it, when I find it a lot with psychedelics. Like when I come out of big ceremonies or different times that I do very intentional larger doses, I'm much more in tune to the synchronicity. It's just a tuning. And there's time and place for it. And I think, and there's time that sometimes it's just got to get shit done. And it's different than that. But I think they're there for us in every single moment. And I think they're signals. And it's just little like breadcrumbs that is kind of like given along the way. And there's like, you can kind of unfold what's this map that's being put in front of me. And you can just kind of like listen to each step. And it signals, I think, when they show up and when we sense into them, they're like the greatest. They're such great gifts. They're just these beautiful little affirmations. It's just like, all I'm going to do is just keep telling you, here's your sign. Just keep going.
Yeah. Well, a little one that just happened that you weren't even present for was, well, the first part of it, I compared this place to Apple, which we'll get into this place and what that means. But I come in here, Ben's setting up the cameras, and he's like, yeah, this feels like Apple in the early days. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I just said that.
Yeah, you said that to me like 20 minutes before.
Yeah, so
that's crazy.
It's like, but I find that noting these moments are ways that they keep appearing more, and it's almost like giving gratitude for them. So like, I have a note in my phone of different synchronicities that happen and how they happen, and it's just like, it makes you more wondrous about life. It makes you so excited about the journey that's unfolding.
They're vital. I mean, they are the yeah, I think if you're feeding gratitude to them, they will keep showing up. If gratitude is not felt and like a sense of acknowledgement to them, they will fade.
Yeah. And
they come, and that is what that is. But if gratitude's present, like they could grow. The momentum can even get larger with the synchronicities.
Absolutely. So what happened with the ayahuasca?
Hey man, I went down. I was working for the San Jose Earthquakes. Awesome. Had a great job. Grew up playing soccer. Love my job. And I went down and I thought that I was gonna, I really went down with like discovering what spirituality was for me. And, I grew up in a pretty like Christian home and kind of grew up in like kind of a spiritual sense there. But it was a more of a, it's just the setting that I grew up in, and it was something I was connected to, but like it wasn't, never felt like it was fully me that was like in it.
It was like forced upon you.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like a full decision. I learned a lot from it. And so there was almost like a stepping out. I was like, I'm still looking for what is this? Like this term that I see people have, and it felt very outside of me. So I was going in with that intention. And in the back of my head, I thought I was going to go down there on a separate note and just be like, hey, you need to quit your job and we're going to go on some adventure and go do this thing or whatever, which was comical because it was like the first night in, I was like, it was so quickly, don't worry about that. Like that is already taken care of. Like there's nothing you need to worry. Like your job is like, you are so focused on like the tip of the iceberg and like, brother, we're going on a whole other journey here. So I was down for the ride, and that became, and that was like, it was I think it was the most one of the bigger things I'd ever dedicated to in my life, of like committed to, like I want to go and like fully surrender to this experience and like take me where I can go. I'm open to it all. And it totally took me to my edge. And so, going down there, man, just coming out with like a whole new, just like lust and like excitement and like truly a magic, like how magical life is. And, I think a deeper connection, like, yeah, I mean, the people that do psychedelics, it can connect you to yourself on new levels. And I came out very, so it's hard to put into words sometimes, but just so at peace with just my place in life and my family. And, it really comes down, it wasn't even so much like this grand universe. It was like core relationships, like my mom and my dad. Like, let's focus on that. Who are they to me? Who am I to them? Like, just like really not even mending because there was nothing wrong with it, but just a deeper understanding of that, which in turn fed me so much more of a deeper understanding of myself. And, just came out. I mean, there's so many like stories within that, like first time of just like, it's my first like real entrance into psychedelics and the power and what could be opened up to it. And ayahuasca has now become a very big tool that I work with about once a year. It's more of a place that for me, this is just me that how I use it, but it's like a place that I just go and lose control and it just scares the shit out of me. And I think I have a pretty like beautiful, like sometimes I don't want to say easy life, but like, I have a comfortable life. And yeah, I get challenged through the business and relationships and stuff that I manufacture to put myself in, but I'm manufacturing it. Where ayahuasca is this moment where I kind of like rip it up and be like, I don't know what's going to happen, and I have to go in and I'm going to handle it, and I'm gonna surrender to it, or I'm gonna meet the moment, whatever it is. So it feels like it's like this training of my resilience and my just being able to do something hard that I didn't like. Yeah, I did manufacture the fact that I'm going in and drinking this and doing this, but I don't know what's coming, and I'm going to be okay with that. And so that's why I go in. It just kind of shakes me at my core, and I come out and be like, okay, grateful I did that. Step into the next thing.
What did you learn about yourself the first time you did it?
I think I did learn just the power of the human being, like our ability truly to create whatever we want. Like every belief, every pattern, it's real in the fact that it's there, but it's absolutely just, there is a whole other space that is so much more expansive beyond everything that we limit ourselves with. being able to just understanding like small things matter, like ripples of, you know, how we speak to someone. Like, are we speaking to people? Am I speaking to this person because that's how it makes sense to me? Or am I speaking to actually connect and like speak their language? And just subtle things in there. I think also understanding on the biggest picture of I have no fucking clue what's going on. Like to get these glimpses into these windows of time and space and open up my mind and my heart and to a place that I didn't even know existed and be like, wow, like this, and this even feels like I'm touching the surface, like I'm skimming the surface here. It's so vast. And so just the gratitude of, you know, I'm not a great trip teller or storyteller of the journey, but just knowing like, man, you get a glimpse into this for a moment in time and it's going to close back up. You're going to come back into the world. You're going to kind of have, you know, be back into kind of the human element. And knowing like, man, there's so much more going on, no matter how much I get into a rut or how much I get into like a simple pattern of the day to day, like always connected in the back. It's like, there's a lot more going on here. And so I think that has kind of been you talk about spirituality. That's what spirituality is to me, is like, nobody knows what's going on. And that's just, there's beauty in that.
Yeah. There's also freedom that comes from that of like, I know for Peter Crone, his big aha moment was when he broke up with his girlfriend or his girlfriend broke up with him and he was sitting there crying about it, being very upset. And he just goes, I don't know what's going to happen with her. And I don't know what's going to happen with the future. And that to him was like an unlock that released so much tension. And you just said the same thing of like, ayahuasca told me basically, I have no fucking clue what's going on. And that gives you peace for some reason, because I think that what we try to do is all right, if I do this many podcasts, then this will happen. Then I will be able to, it's like, dude, you just don't know.
You don't know.
You just don't. And why do you get such peace from, I don't know?
I think it comes down to the death part. Like at the end of the day, like my mind, like we're going to die and I have no clue what's going to happen there. Like that, like as much as I'll try and make meaning and say, this is what death is and this is where we are. It's like, we don't know. And it's fucking crazy to me that we all go around our lives and we do our normal, I build a business and we do the thing. I have just cordial conversations and it's like, and we have no fucking clue why or really how we're here. And that to me is like the most exciting, no matter how much of a rut I can get in and like make me become pessimistic or become like certain in something. It's like this little trickery voice in the back. It's like, you don't know. You don't know, dude. Like, that's silly. That's cute. You think that. And so that's like peace to me. It's literally, it's almost, that's the freedom. Like, no matter what I get caught up in, good, bad, all of it. It's like, cool. You don't know. Like, you don't know. And it takes so much out from my mind spinning on things that I don't know about.
Yeah.
And that to me is freedom. It gives me peace of mind. It gives me the ability, like, cool, like we could shoot the shit on what that is. It's fun. And at the end of the day, there's nothing we've figured out from that. And that's fine. And that to me is just, that's peace.
Yeah. Well, it really came up for me when I started to go deep on meditation. And I would start to notice that I couldn't actually predict the next thought that was coming to mind. So if I didn't know the next thought that was coming to mind, how was I going to possibly predict where I was going to be a year from now? If you really sit with that, like you don't know what's going to come up for you at any given moment. So how are you so sure about the outcomes that you're scared of happening or not happening? It's like,
I think we saw that so front and center with the pandemic.
Yep, it's exactly what I was thinking.
It was like the ultimate, like, I mean, for lack of better, it was the ultimate psychedelic moment. It was like, we're all experiencing this, like usually we all were splintered of 8 billion events that were happening to us and everyone lived their own little life. This was one global event that every single person reacted to at the same time. Like, yeah, there's big events that happen. 9/11 happens, we have a response to it. We're all kind of in that energy. This was one, especially like, let's just say our country. Everyone go inside your house on one day. Like one thing, like everyone went and did it. Everyone went and did it. And it was like such a moment of like, I remember at that time I had my other business, Capital Floats. And I was just in a momentum of like, I thought I could project what the next year was, what the next 3 months were. I remember I went on a trip to Hawaii with one of my good friends. I left in Hawaii with a great business, came back with it shut down. Like, it was like, that was such a, you don't know, this is how it's always been. This just happened to show, like, actually throw a wrench in your plan. But you've never, like, the plan has never been of certainty. You've started, just because you had a couple years of some certainty, you started to, or what was perceived as certainty, it flowed a certain way. So I think the pandemic was this exciting moment where it was truly this moment of like, we don't know how this is. And I think that's what was so hard for a lot of us. It was this, some really rose to the moment and was like, this is exciting. Like, this is a whole new, I get to shift something. I get to do something different. Others were like, I'm not in control. And there was a breakdown and it was really hard. And I think we all had our trials and tribulations through that. Some of us, we had moments of big growth. We had other, alcohol became this monstrous thing that was utilized. And I think that was just a reflection of like, that was a moment that the universe just showed us like, there is nothing certain here. Here's a complete curveball. And this is how it always is. Curveballs can come at every moment. And, I think that was, not everyone is agreement of this, but those moments are like, while they're hard, they're like the greatest gifts. Mm-hmm. It's like the accident. It was this, you get a moment where it's like, you actually don't have to change. Everything around you changed. And so now you get to choose, like, what do you want to do now? And that, to me, makes it actually easier to go make the adjustment than when it's just all status quo and it's like, fuck, I actually have to change all my patterns outside of the current momentum.
Yeah. And another thing that you triggered and made me think about was that the enemy, similar to a psychedelic trip, is not something you could see. And it's really something that is, it's there, the enemy is present, but you also can't actually see it. So then you're like, is it real? And then it plays in your head like that of like, we sometimes refuse to believe in that which we cannot see.
Of course.
But we know germs exist. We can't see germs, and yet we accept them as real. And I think that there's a lot more going on than what we can actually see. And I think psychedelics point to that, meditation points to that, and really the consciousness of our life points to there's something greater than what we can actually see.
Totally. And it's like it's a very like humbling and I think important because it's, as much as control is, I think, what like an egoic, like that is, it's what's known. It wants to, like, we'll live in, as opposed to changing, we would live in misery because it's what we know. It's like, it's a very human condition. And, I think understanding like there's so much more going on than what meets the eye is like to me, one of the most freeing things to be connected to.
Yeah. So you come back from that first ayahuasca experience and you're like, I need to connect with my family at a deeper level. Like, what about that experience made you more aware of your relationships with your parents or your family or the people you wanted to connect with?
I think for the one thing that I came back from that, both my parents but for some reason it really stuck with me and my mom, is like I got to see it. And something I beautifully got to take for granted, but was what love was. Like she gave that to me from day one. Like I never questioned what love was. I had it. And because of that, I took it for granted. But I understood I knew I was loved. Like to know that in the background of like my subconscious mind that you are loved. And I think being able to bring that to my conscious mind and actually like see my mom for that. And like I look at everything that I truly go back to everything that I've achieved is because of that basis. That I felt love. I didn't have to learn love. I was born into it. And I have so much empathy and sympathy and all the things for people that have to like question that. And And I'm so grateful I never questioned that. And so that was probably the biggest thing that I came from there of just like, man, you're like, that's it. You're loved. I am loved. Was able to like see my mom that way. Everything she did for me in life was like out of love, no matter if I agreed with it, disagreed with it. Like, understanding. Yeah, I think that was like a huge thing. And then finally, like starting to be open with who I was. I was kind of a separate, I'd gone a different route than what my parents and my sister and I love each other dearly, just have lived very different lives. She's been more on the trajectory of my parents' life. And I think as kids, we choose like, I want to be like my parents or I want to be not like my parents. And we pick and choose those areas. And I, from a lifestyle, wanted to be different. For some reason, I chose that. And so I'd always been that way. And I don't think I was like fully honest and open to what it was kind of a hidden, I wouldn't say hidden, but I just didn't feel they cared about that. Or I was like maybe even secure enough in myself. Like I didn't even tell my parents I was going to the jungle.
Wow.
I was going to a meditation retreat down in South America. I finally told my dad like a week before. Scared the shit out of him. This was like a very unknown thing at the time. Mm-hmm. No one I'd never met a single person that had done this and couldn't tell my mom. And I remember like midway through was just like sobbing. I was just like lost in my like, oh my God, like I remember I got some cell service when I was down there and it was so adamant that I was able to call her and just tell her like, Mom, like I love you more than you can, like, thank you. It was like this thing, it was like urgent. I have to tell her. And I remember like that coming forward there and then coming back and, just starting to be more open about, I wasn't even at my job at the time. I thought I was pretty honest with who I was, but I didn't really tell many people that I was going to do this, only like select people. And so it set out into like, how do you live even more authentically? Where are you not being honest to, the public, which in turn is yourself? Like you're just like, there's something, if you're not being honest there, then you are insecure about this. And so that set out into, I 7 months after I got back, I ended up committing to the business plan of launching Capital Floats, which is a float therapy center. And that felt like the next level of my authenticity of like, first, this is going to challenge me in a way that I've never launched a business. I don't really even know how to go do that. I didn't even view myself very entrepreneurial. I got to go do this. And this is going to get me around the people that I want to be spending more time with. Like that, it felt like it was like these are the people that I want to communicate with. Like people that are in float tanks was for some reason like the network I wanted to be around. But I didn't really have, I mean, not just the fact they're in a float tank, but I think people that go spend 60 minutes by themselves and reflect, and whether it's meditation or whatever the reasons they're in there, at that point in my life, that wasn't a huge network that I had.
I see.
And so it was like, how do I want to be around these people. Like that was the first vision I had when I was in the float center. It was like it came into me. I call it a whisper. I was sitting there and I was at the front desk waiting for my turn to get, I was in San Francisco in a basement and they were like waiting to take me into my float tank. And I remember seeing what I thought were normal people. I had a perception that floating was like the weirdest thing. This is like Matrix style, again, back 2012, not many people were doing this.
True. And
I remember seeing it. I was like, and I felt such like a newbie. And I just wanted to talk to these people. I was like, what's your story? Like this is a whole new world to me that I'm just entering into and you look like you've been doing it. Tell me about it. And so that's when it like came in as a whisper. It was like, well, then go create a place that you can do that. And that was it gave me chills. It shook me at my core of hearing that. And so, that opening the float center was like, I felt like this, it was like this, the ultimate selfish thing that was the greatest gift I could give. It was like the most paradoxical. It was like, I'm doing this for me from a livelihood standpoint, but ultimately the people that I'm now going to get to talk to, I'm sure it's pretty similar to you with this podcast. And I'm seeing the look on your face right now. And I knew how much it had changed my life. And it was like, I have a duty to get this out there to more people and create this to be more openly available to other people. And that became the mission at that point.
Yeah, I got tears in my eyes right now and I got chills because you described what you just said is I wanted to be selfish and selfless at the same time. And I often describe my grandpa, one of my greatest role models in my entire life, as living a perfect life in the sense of he is selfish and selfless at the same time. When you're able to put those two together, it creates a mix of you're not just living for other people, but you are caring for other people. And you talking about starting the float tanks because of that is amazing and a perfect embodiment of what I'm talking about. You know, I also agree that being able to live authentically and being able to say what is on your mind and saying what is on your heart and living that truth is one of the most important things we can do. Maybe somebody's hearing what you're talking about and they're like, I don't want to go to South America to do ayahuasca. What are some ways you think that they can get closer to living authentically and living real and being more open without going to the jungle?
Yeah, I mean, I think the jungle was the thing for me that was so terrifyingly honest to myself that I had to go do. That was my thing. Everyone has their jungle archetype. I don't know what that is for everyone. That could be, I want to join a networking group. I'm going to go talk to strangers. I don't, you know, we all have the thing that anyone listening, take a moment in silence and just be like, what has been kind of whirling around your mind that you're a little afraid of? Go do it. Yeah. Like it's as simple as that. Like it's not, you don't need to go reverse engineer the greatest thing of going to the jungle or traveling the globe or launching a company. Maybe that's the thing. It might just be, a lot of the times it's a lot more, maybe it's having the convo that you're scared to have with your girlfriend. Say the thing that's actually on your heart and go say that and see what happens. I guarantee if you say what's honest and what's on your heart, the outcome will blow you away. And so I find that thing, so, you know, that I could list a million things that, you know, I just said the thing, have the conversation with my girlfriend. Like that's always a thing. There's always something unsaid that could be said, should be, I want to say, you know, even like her and I do this game now with our card. It's like an action. We pull these cards and it's like very profound, sometimes super vulnerable questions. And I always get nervous before we do it because it's going to be something unsaid. So that's the thing for me that sometimes like, okay, what can I do? How can I get a little more authentic here?
What's that card game called?
I could look it up. It's I will put it in the.
We'll put it in the show notes below. You'll send it to me.
What's it called? It's everyone's probably seen it on. It's definitely one of the like. It is like last night the card that I pulled was, what is the thing you're scared to say to me? What is something that you're scared to say to me?
Wow.
So it's like that's a very like, wow, I'm scared to say it. Like that was the front and center. Yeah. Like, and we had that convo last night.
Wow.
And so, you know, it's this moment to, I got to get real honest. Like, it can't just be something that I can kind of coax around of like, oh, this sounds vulnerable, but it's not really vulnerable. It's like, no, I actually have to be scared of this. What is the thing I'm scared of? So, you know, that's the type of stuff. So, yeah.
The point is that we all have a whisper inside of us at all times of like, I should do that thing, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know what the best way is to approach that subject or to do that action. And yeah, it's really remarkable that you had a situation force you into the jungle where you have the accident and then it turns into taking you on a journey that is your greatest gift in some respects. Talk to me about, I haven't heard you speak much about the float tanks and actually spending time in them, because I'm sure you own a float tank center. You then start spending a lot of time with yourself in the float tanks, I would assume.
Yes.
What's that experience like, and what did you learn about yourself in that time? What was your protocol like, and take us through? Yeah,
it was definitely like different seasons. I've had different ways of being in the float tank. When it started out, it was so radical to me to be by myself. Like it just felt, first it felt cool. Like I felt cool. Like I was just like, this is, and it kind of became a part of my identity. Like I'm the guy that gets in these old, this is old samadhi tanks. They're almost coffin-like looking. They're not the new beautiful big pods or rooms. And I thought that was so cool. So there was like an identity that was building. But it was more of like getting into, I think it was like my first time really getting into meditation and being like, observing everything. The itch comes. Like, it's just an itch. It's a sensation. It's not, you can choose to go wipe. And I would just try and go 60 to 90 minutes and not move an inch. Wow. That was like my first year. And it was kind of militant. Like, it was kind of, that was my protocol. Like, I was like, I remember I had one early, it was probably, it was actually probably within a year and a half of floating. So I'm pretty deep into this at this point. This is like my thing. I'm floating. I hadn't started the float center yet. I was still living in San Francisco. And I remember being in the float tank, and this one I actually took a little edible before, which I don't normally do. And I don't actually recommend it if that's not what you're used to, because that, you want to talk a ride, like an edible in a float tank is a whole new ballgame. And it's not something I actually do very, very often. But anyways, I did it. We were in San Francisco, and there was a rumble. And I thought, I was certain earthquake was happening. And I was like, this is it. You're going to die in the float tank while the rumble's happening. And I felt the whole, like, the water starts kind of rippling. Oh my God. And I think it was strictly that there was like a big truck drove by. And I think because we're right underneath the street. And the whole thing started shaking. And I just got so stoked that this was it. I was like, don't you move. Like, this is your moment. Like, almost my ego got big into like, of course you're going to die in a float tank. Like, and I just surrendered into it. But that's who I was at that time. Like you want to like get a glimpse of what my life was like. It was like that. And then it became much more of a, I saw it evolve. Once I committed to like, I'm going to start a float center, it became like a tool to actually just rest. Like, how much I was putting my mind and expending energy to get this float center opened. And it became a tool just to how do I rest? And then it became more of a tool of like, let's take in like what's on your mind? Like, what's a big thing that you're grappling with in life? Like, let's just take it in there and let's just give some focus to that thought. Just let that flow and let's see who you come out with it after. I remember I took a massive one. It was before I had gone to launch the float center and the quakes. It was a big business. Like, do I stay in this career? And I remember I was like, literally I was going to quit and take this kind of like severance option that was on the table, or I was going to like go deeper into the career. And I went in and it was like the most clear thing ever. I just took that in. I came out, I was like, you're sticking around. Like, and it was like, there was no more rattling of that. So I used that as a tool there. And so it's evolved over time into what, now it's more of, I'm not in as much as I'd like to, which is a big signal. And it's like, I'm very resistant. I'm more resistant to getting in right now.
Because there's something.
Exactly. It's like getting in and actually like, I think right now my life is it's so rapid.
Yes.
And to go, I struggle even right now to do, my meditation's in the cold plunge. Like, wow. Truly, like that's where I come out feeling like I've been in a meditative state. And you
can't be doing that for more than 10, 20 minutes.
No, I mean, I only do 3 minutes.
Right.
It's more of like I come out with that meditative state,
yep.
But I don't have a super consistent meditation practice right now, which is, it's my own thing I'm grappling with. Where floating to give 60 minutes right now is like to sit still. It's where I need to be. And, I'm saying this, this is what the internal, you want to talk about what my little whisper is right now? It's like, dude, go get in the float tank. Like, you have access. Like, it's been probably 2-3 months since I've been in. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so I think that's like, right now it's just more of a place to pause and be like, dude, do nothing. Put this phone away. Like I do see floating as this like radical thing as we become more and more connected to technology, that it's this place that you actually pay to like fully separate yourself from your phone. Mm-hmm. We rarely get 60 minutes of like unadulterated time with no stimuli coming in. And so I think which is radical, that you pay money to go be in a dark box for 60 minutes, but it's one of the healthiest things you can do.
Yeah. And if you don't have access to the money, or you can't do that, what I do and have been doing every day for the past 2 months straight, 5 days, is 60 minutes of meditation. Just sitting with the thoughts, letting them come, whatever they are. And it's the same experience you're talking about. You don't have to pay. You have to be a little more disciplined, I guess. But
morning time, nighttime?
I've been doing it right before bed and sleeping like a baby. Like, it is incredible. Just go right to sleep after. It is
Good for you.
the
man.
best thing ever, and has opened up so much joy and peace and just amazingness in my life in that time as well, that I have to say is connected to the meditation. You talked about being in the float tank and the earthquake, quote unquote, happening. And I've heard you talk about in previous podcasts about how you think that your life is preparing you for meeting death, and how that is such an important piece that you keep thinking about over and over and over again. How do you meet death most effectively?
I think it's surrender. And it's very paradoxical because you don't know what that moment's going to, there's times to fight and there's times to, you're fighting for your life and, what that is. It's a belief I have that there's a moment that we cross over. Whatever crossover is, whatever letting go, whatever we're surrendering, I don't know. But I feel there's a moment, and I feel it matters how we surrender into it. It's a belief I have. It's my belief. But I believe it. And there's a moment that's going to come. We're going to cross. Whatever crossing is, it's, for lack of a better term. And I want to meet that moment. I want to surrender. And psychedelics have been that teacher for me. They're like how to, like the cold plunging as well. They're different in their own way. It's like the more I fight, like if you get in cold water, the more you fight it and like, I'm going to tough this through, it ain't going to work. You might get through 5 minutes there and you might think you're badass, but you ain't getting back. You're actually, it's a detriment to yourself over time. Mm-hmm. It's how much can you surrender into the experience. And I do think, similar to like hard workouts, like when you're pushing that edge of like doing the wall sit and it's like, can I go that extra time? It's like, let go into it. Like, don't fight the pain that's coming. Like, can I be with it? I think that's, in hard moments, it's like, that's a critical ingredient to actually be with it. So death to me is like always, it's coming. I'm excited for it. Like I'm an adrenaline junkie. I like doing wild shit. And that to me just sounds like the wildest thing. I love life. I'm not here. It's again, another paradox. Like I'm excited for that. And I love every bit here. And I want to live a long, healthy life and go as long as I can doing this. And fuck, I get to die. I get to die. And I find that so peaceful.
You referenced the book Who Dies by Stephen Levine before as an impactful one. Do you remember like what exactly it taught you or what exactly you learned from that book?
I learned how much you can learn from death. I think that's a fascinating book. That's another synchronistic book that showed up. I remember I read it in college and it like shook me and I kind of lost it. It was like I read this book. I forgot who wrote it. I like read part of it. And then I actually found it on a bookshelf my second time down in the jungle.
Wow.
Like it was like, oh, and it just showed up in life in this moment, like ready to receive it and read it. And yeah, it was Stephen Levine. He's the author of that book. He wrote it back, I believe, in the 80s. Ram Dass was the encouragement for him to write it. Stephen Levine had spent arguably the most hours with people on their deathbed in hospice care. And it was a book on like who dies, like the question of like, yes, the individual is dying, but the family is dying. The mother is losing the son. Like what is she losing now? It focused on the individual that's dying. It focused on individuals that fought it and didn't want to accept that it was happening. It focused on individuals that did it and the ones that did who accept. I mean, this is where a lot of my like outside of like crossing over and what that means, but like accepting death comes from this book. And hearing the transformation that took place in families and individuals that accepted the death that was looming, whether they were able to go live another extra few years or whatever, it is night and day the difference. The peace, the love, the magic, everything that encapsulated and came into these families and individuals' lives. And I just look at that, I'm like, man, I got to learn this and soak this in, and I didn't have to go spend thousands of hours with people on their deathbed, which I think is probably a beautiful experience to go happen. But I got it. I got that. It's like, can you accept your mortality? It was also a book, and it was a really challenging book. It was like on children. It's like not everyone's just 90 years old that's passing and has their family around them. There are kids that we just don't understand why. They're 6 years old and they were super healthy, and then they're gone, and like what that means to a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, families that are in turmoil and hostility, and there's just, there's resentments, and it's not in a harmonious place before it goes, and what that like, and how that lingers, and how that ripples into life. So that book just took a incredible writer, incredible thinker who just happened to spend more time with arguably anyone in the world and with people at their deathbed.
Damn. Yeah. That's crazy, man. Love to talk to you about, like, I think what we've talked about so far is a good representation for the state that you have entered into to launch this most recent venture. And it's like, people might look at it and be like, oh, he's trying to take advantage of a market opportunity, but like when you understand where it comes from, I think it has a whole new layer and meaning, because similar to the iceberg analogy, there's so much under the plunge. There is so many years of work that you've put into yourself to build this company. And that is all manifesting in this moment. And it also makes the foundation of what you're building so much stronger. Let's say you come out of the jungle and you launch the plunge and you create a new category of a product. That's going to have a way different effect than 6 more years or 7 years of working on yourself and getting to the point where you are today. So how does that resonate with you?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
This wasn't planned. This wasn't like a business plan venture that's like, I think there's an opportunity and there's a market segment, and no, it was not that at all. It was, again, a lot of events happened that led to this. I mean, I look like Mike, my co-founder, Michael Guerra, is one of my best friends, and we had very similar life stories. He went to the jungle. He had a impactful life experience in Thailand, where I had a crazy life experience in Thailand.
Wow.
We're 1 year apart, so there's something unique going on. He goes there. Then he goes to the jungle. He goes to Peru. We're on totally set. We've never met each other. I go to Peru. We're all within like a year of everything. He comes back. I'm starting a float center. I come back. I'm starting a float center. I read his story online. He's starting in San Francisco. I'm in Sacramento. So we're like these two kind of like merging, like these little entities that are kind of bouncing around each other. Don't know each other. I read his story online. I had goosebumps. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, things solo, impactful, cool Thailand experience. Yeah, people have had it. It was just all the things were lining up. So I remember he opened up his business a year before mine. I walked in the first day and I said, hey man, we're gonna be friends. He was working the front desk. It was a reboot, floating cryo in the marina. And he was just like, yeah, cool. We became friends. And then I opened up and we were buddies above everything else. We became tons of similar life interests, had a lot of like beautiful experiences together, traveled around, festival scene. We did a big fundraiser for MAPS back in 2018 when they were going through their phase 3 trials for MDMA, assisted psychotherapy. And so we did a massive fundraiser among the float industry. So that was our real chance to like work together. And we raised money, substantial amount of money by people floating, and money from that went back and donated into the research they were doing. So that was our front and center look of like, you talk about all these moments that like led to it. It was like we built a strong foundation of friendship, similar values, same ethics, same excitement, and kind of like what life kind of meant to us. We did MAPS together. I remember a big landmark education has been like a huge transformational course that I've done. Mike was one that called me one day. I was like, hey man, I'm doing this. I think it's been one of the most impactful things in my life. I did it. It's now become a massive thing. We pay for all of our team to do it here at the company. If you want to go do it, you can go do it. So it's like these moments these breadcrumbs that we were just like building a foundation that we had Plunge was not a discussion. There was never, we maybe thought maybe we do something in the future together, but there was no clinging to like, how do we make this happen? It was nothing. All we were really doing was setting the soil and the foundation to really, when the moment came, and that was the pandemic, businesses shut down. Again, Mike had happened to 6 months before the pandemic decided to move him and his wife outside of the Bay Area to Sacramento. So this was before all the mass exodus was happening. He happened to move to Sacramento to be where I was, or not where I was, but just like, I want to go to Sacramento. It's more affordable. He literally moved like 2 weeks after the quarantine, like he was during the quarantine. He moves to Sacramento. And we now have this moment where it's like, it's the first, we're in the same city. We've built this 5 to 6 year relationship of massive understanding of each other, massive respect. We had both started to get into cold plunging heavy. Like I had some sickness. I started plunging all the time. Mike was the engineer. He had the chest freezer. He had built all these different styles of cold plunges that just in his garage. And so this was a part of our life. I was hitting the rivers multiple times a week. I was going to a commercial facility that had, like, I was all in on this. It was one of the biggest parts of my lifestyle at the time. And it was really just like, hey, it's kind of crazy. Everything's like $10,000 or more. Like, why is that? And we just, cool. Well, maybe Mike starts, I had gone through a lot of shit during the beginning of the pandemic. Mike was a little more grounded at the moment.
What do you mean by shit?
Business shut down, so all my income dried up. My girlfriend and I, who were together now, we broke up. So that was like a 2.5 year relationship ended. Wow. All my income went away, so I sold all my stuff and moved into an RV to kind of shore I had no money.
Right.
So I was like, I have enough to buy an RV, and I feel like I could go camp this in the foothills at a place with cell service and run the business. So I went and did that. And so it was kind of, Ryan and I got back together. So it was like a 3 to 4 month window where I was like, I don't know if I'm at the spot to launch a business. Like, I'm trying to just get my other business open. And we were opening our second location. It opened June 15th. So we had like completely run out of money on building that out. And we were supposed to get open, the pandemic hits, and then to launch a brick and mortar business in California So there was a lot on my plate. Mike was, hey, I'm going to start 3D prototyping and building out of my garage some cold plunges. I'm not the engineer guy. Like that's where he is. And so I started to see him evolve it. And he was kind of, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to sell some of these? I was like, dude, let me get my life in order. And I was just kind of like, I'm not a no, but I'm not a yes. And I need to, let's say, over a 6 to 8 week window, we're just kind of, he's iterating the product, he's improving it. I'm seeing it like come to life. I'm like, whoa, okay. Like it got to a spot where I was like, I would be comfortable selling this to people. Like I would be comfortable. This would be awesome if all my friends bought this. Like They would be stoked. I would be stoked to provide this. And so that was when we just decided we're in his garage and we're like, let's sell 20. We have an email list from our other brick and mortar businesses that are customers that are probably would adapt to this. Yeah. And so we said, hey, we emailed out. We said, hey guys, this is a project we've been working on. It's a side thing we've done. We want to build 20 of these and we'll hand deliver to your house. And, the rest is kind of history from that moment. That was September of 2020. And what I get to is like, it seems so, like I was walking around the facility with you today, and it's like it's happened very quickly, and it still hasn't, the rate that it's moving, I'm still like, how the fuck did this happen? And I also look back and it was like, man, you never quite know what you're building you have this podcast you're building right now. Like you probably have an idea of what it's going to become, but it's going to be different. It's going to be something you can't even imagine, some relationship that you connected early on. So, it's like, when you're on the path, you know where you need to be. And, I felt, looking back, it's like, man, I couldn't have scripted this any better. It took us 5 to 6 years. It took us, Mike and I's relationship, 5 years. And the moment we committed in business, It was the fastest thing I've ever been a part of. And you don't quite know what you're building and what's going into the process. And because of that, him and I have been able to move so fast with the business because there's no questioning of his character, his ethics, our trust amongst each other. We have completely different skill sets, which makes it really easy too. If we had if I was a product guy and he was a product guy, there might be some I know what his genius is, he knows mine, and we can divide and we can move at such a pace but it was a snail's pace for 5 years. You wouldn't even know. Plunge was being built for 5 years before that moment, September, where we turned the website on and said, I remember we turned the website on and I was on my last hurrah. I was on a trip in the RV up to Wyoming, and him and I were launching the business. I'd had this trip planned with a buddy. We were going on the RV. It was like the last thing, and I was coming back, and we were jumping into the business. We turned the website on while I was out there. I remember we had a sale in 45 minutes. Like, it was I think the unit was probably $4,000 then. But to have, we didn't, I'm talking, we just hit live on Shopify. There wasn't a text. There wasn't an Instagram post. There was nothing.
How'd that person find it?
She was a float center owner, kind of been following the story because I think Mike had maybe posted something on Reboot months before, and she was just like, he's got to sell these eventually. It just showed the product market fit.
Right.
It's like that.
Immediate.
It was the affirmation. I remember I was with Blake, who my buddy was, who I was with in Thailand.
Wow. Full circle.
He's sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, we just sold one. And he just had the most calm look at me and he's like, yeah, this is gonna crush, dude. This is, and then you don't know. It's just been momentum the whole time and different steps along the way of and it's grown at a pace that, it started garage, bike shop, 3,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet, 40, 120. It's hit a different scale. But, to your point, I think I look back, and this is kind of a cool reflection for me. So thanks for bringing up this question of all the seeds were being planted for a 5-year window. And then it was very clear of why and what the tree was going to be.
Well, that makes me think about even in the down moments, even in the moments where you were like, my life is shit, or the things that my circumstances outside are shit, those moments are part of the path too. And I don't think we often reflect and realize that while we're in it because it's difficult to, and we're like, life sucks. But that is part of the path. And when you view the path as your evolving of your own consciousness.
It's actually in the big picture, those are the greatest gifts on the path because they bring the perspective of man, I earned this, but it's so shitty in it. No one wants to hear it when you're actually in the challenging part.
Yeah.
How can you separate, from, okay, this is happening right now and this is a signal that I'm in growth mode. We have a value here. It's at our company. It's called Find Your Edge. And it's that. It's can you hang out on that edge? When you're in a breakdown mode, we try and bring the awareness, it's the company's expected to mirror it back to you. This is where you want to be. This means that you're entering into something that you haven't been into before. And this is where the real growth happens. You can't grow if you're just hanging out where you've been. So we try and it's nice when you have an accountability group around you to support you, but when you're solo in it, man, it fucking sucks.
Okay, so take me through the edge of going around the country and hand delivering these to some of the biggest influencers and thought leaders and the people who are shaping the culture in the world. You were the ones who were hand delivering to Aubrey Marcus, to Rich Roll, to Dr. Andrew Huberman. You were going to their houses and giving them the cold plunges. What was that like?
Oh, it was one of the coolest things. I mean, it is one of the coolest things to build these relationships, go drop in to these people that I've admired that are having huge impacts in the world, and just sit with them and connect with them and just be buddies with them. And it's a pretty simple playbook. It started with Aubrey. Aubrey was our first unit. It was actually the first unit we ever shipped was to Aubrey Marcus's house.
Wow.
Thank God it arrived intact.
Were you freaking out?
We were. It was like there's one thing about building cold plunges and hand delivering them in Mike's van. There's another thing of putting them on a pallet and shipping them freight around the country, which is a whole different business. And we've learned a lot into how to do that. But that was our first one. We fucking remember we had to buy a custom. It was like how do you even? We have to get it to Aubrey's house by this date because how it happened was he posted in his chest freezer. Mike was on our IG and was like, "Hey man, looks like you need an upgrade," and just like shot a comment. Love to upgrade you, like as Plunge. Aubrey's like, "You guys, is this real? If you're serious, like DM me." DM. He's like, "Cool. Why don't you guys come out?" And we're like, "Oh shit!" Like we're still in Mike's garage, just like building these things. Like, okay, got to go out. And then it's like we had a date. I think it was like late November of 2020. So we had to book flight. You know, obviously us getting out there wasn't the thing, but it's like we need to build a plunge because we were still like taking some orders and having to build these in the garage. And then it's like, how do you ship this thing? And I remember like, oh, we got to find pallets. Like, where do you find a pallet that's custom to this? I remember like ending up in like the random places in Sacramento in these like pallet yards buying, okay, I need a pallet. I need one pallet this size. Like, it's a very custom sized pallet. I'm like, yeah, I need it. Get the pallet, buy a box. Of course, I didn't even know how to order a box. The box is like the inverse box. It's like, I mean, it was absurd. But we were able to get it all around and we're like, okay, cool. And then we just like, I think you just strap it to this, which was terrible. We did everything wrong in how you would ship freight, but it showed up correctly.
Wow.
Like our next units that we shipped that way had some issues.
So it could have been a problem.
It surprisingly wasn't. And yeah, and it
That's
showed
like
up
God.
and we connected with Aubrey and, and it started, I think from there, we just went person to person with everyone, built a relationship. And then it was like, hey, you have a friend that's love to connect with your friends. And it was more of that, like, hey, how can we support you in doing something cool for your friends? And, and then the invite happens here and then the invite happens here. And it just kind of spread that way. And we would just go with no agenda. Like there was nothing we were wanting. We just wanted to go set it up. But we had identified what we had done. We called it an entourage effect. And we had identified 20 or so people that we thought were doing aligned with who we were. We felt very good about the work that they were putting out in the world, the impact they were having, and their reach. And we're like, if we can get with these 20 people, we call it the entourage effect, we can feel like we're everywhere.
Yeah.
We had a list. We were only in one office at the time, not much big, twice the size of this room. We just had one whiteboard, and we just put them on there, and we just kind of like went after it. And it was interesting. The world's not big, once you're in with a lot of people are friends with other people. And so we just played that game. And then we really worked hard to manage those relationships. It's like, how do we be of value to these people? And, we're kind of, truly into like try and embody gifting as opposed like, okay, we're gifting this and we're letting go of the expectation. Can you just share this with the world? I don't care how you do this. If you love it, share it. Whether that means just me telling your best friend, I don't care. But it usually shows up 10x of that. One of the big ones was recently, I think back of like Andy Frisilla. I know you just had an interview with him. I mean, Andy, it wasn't even gifted. He got a unit, but it was somehow connected. And we know Andy's impact. Andy had the unit for a year, didn't use it. Then he used it. And this guy you can go listen to his podcast and the testimony he's giving. Like he doesn't shout products out. Changed his life. And he has brought so much attention to cold plunging, whether it's just helping our company, but just in general, this tool for people's mental health. Because he was like, it's like I've done therapy for 20 years with the best therapists in the world. I've done everything you can name. 1 week of cold plunging is the greatest thing that's ever changed my life. And, you talk about the 10X, like those things, knowing how it can transform someone's life. And so we've been really bought into that. We know what this is from like an impact standpoint. It's like, let the plunge do the impact. Let that, as opposed to us telling, hey, this is what we would like. Transformation, when people get it, they're going to share it so much more than what I can envision.
Yeah, that's so true. And the crazy thing about Andy Frisella is that I think he's only been in it for like 8 weeks or some very small amount of time. And I was listening to a podcast he did yesterday, or he put out recently, with Casey Adams, where he's talking about the cold plunge and you guys, like, he had an issue and he rings you guys, and within 5 minutes he gets the cold plunge fixed because you guys were quick in your ability to diagnose a problem. And I'm like, holy smokes, like, just there's so much there in the sense of, one, the customer service and your ability to communicate and maintain relationships and help people is one thing, but two, the reach and the impact, and how he went from, in such a short period of time, like only a year, talking shit about the cold plunge
Totally.
and being like, what's wrong with this? Which I think a lot of people are feeling like, why are all these people making Instagram stories about this? And it's cringeworthy and all this stuff. And then the other side of it is like them trying it and doing it and being like, fuck, this actually works.
Totally.
And like, yeah.
It's one of those things, like when something, we're funny creatures, like but it's also cool. Like when something changes our life, we want to share it.
Yes.
It's very natural.
And when something's new, we're like, oh, like that definitely doesn't work, or that we start to give the excuses for all the reasons why it's not going to work for me.
It's what I was talking about earlier, is like, we will stay where we at. Like, we will not make the move to change. We will stay. Not saying everyone that doesn't like cold plunge or is not into cold plunging or not wanting to try it is in a bad place, but we'll stay where we're at. Like, we usually have an adverse reaction to the thing that could create transformation in our life.
Yeah.
And cold plunging is one of those. And that's what's actually cool about it. I think that's the beautiful part of it, is it maybe gets easier from a sense that the excuses get less, but it's still hard every single time you get in. It's still unenjoyable in that first, the reaction is always going to be there into like, I don't want to be in here. There's a very primal reaction. And so I think that's what it's the beauty of it. You can't get around that. That has to be invoked to get the trade-off of the feeling great and the benefits that you receive.
Yeah, it's one of those things where our first inclination is to criticize is such a widespread thing, and it's helpful to point out, like, what are the things that are triggering you, because those are probably the things that are unlocking your greatest gifts or unique assets. It's like the things that trigger you are probably like just your quick manifestation of, how do I not do this? And how do I criticize it instead of actually doing the thing? So
exactly. And I think it's there, like I mean, and we want to find reasons not to do something like hard. Like, I do that outside of, look, I do cold plunging, but there are fucking a lot of things that I make excuses for that are hard, that I don't want to do, that I know, like, at the core of me is like, man, this is going to make me a better person. Yeah. Or, so I get it. I totally, like, it's human. Yeah. It's what we do.
Yeah. Dude, this has been such a pleasure to have you here for this time. I'm so grateful for you. I feel like an instant connection to you. And there are people out there who are building companies that are coming from a spiritual place and who are elevating the consciousness of humanity, and you are one of those people. What's it been like from the momentum perspective of it? You mentioned like finding your edge, and you're on a rocket ship and you don't have time to meditate. It feels like you don't have time to meditate, and like there's so much going on. Dude, what has the growth been like? Few people ever experience the rapid growth you've experienced in the last 3 years, and I feel like in the next 10 years it's going to be even crazier. So take us through that experience.
Trying to get as many badass humans on the ship as possible. And as the ship grows, it becomes more. We become more capable. I think for me, the challenge has been, I've never been a CEO of a company this size, so I'm learning what a CEO is at different stages.
What's the current size so that we can timestamp this for?
We're about 100-ish employees. About 100-ish employees, and it includes our warehouse team and our production team, and so we kind of have separate sides of the business into we build and produce these here in the United States, and we have that team. Same with our sauna team, and then we have like our, marketing, customer service, sales, R&D, engineers, like all, that side of the team. So it's been, I think it's the great. This is all with gratitude, but it's the accelerant pace that I have to. Usually, I felt like in life, maybe pre-plunge, it's like growth. I jump into growth, you grow, or I grow, and then I get a plateau, and I get a moment to kind of like, I'm in it, cool, like hang in, and then it's going. And this is more of, there's no real choice into the plateau. Like the plateau is very short-lived. Like we call weeks months here, and like in the amount of time that just things get done. And so I think that has been my edge. And in my low moments, it's like, fuck, this seems so much quicker than what I, kind of feel almost helpless in a moment. Like, can I be the person I need to be? Like it feels very far off, and it's like, luckily, it's all moving in a way that's like in a very positive way. So it's like you kind of have no choice. So like figure it out, dude, and catch up. So, and I'm grateful for it because it's like I don't know how many times in life I'm going to get this opportunity for this accelerant of like a vehicle that I get to be in. And before Plunge, you ask everyone that I was around, I wanted to build a scalable. Like you walked into this office, you saw the team, it's buzzing. This was a dream that I like truly envisioned. Wow. Capital Float's launched. It's an incredible company, but it's, we have one person that works the front desk. You scale that through brick and mortars at a different way, and it's a totally different game you're playing. Where here I loved my time at the Quakes, a front office. So to come in here and have this at, a team that we get to be around and working as a unit that's pushing together on one mission that's like around each other, and we're really vibing off each other. I don't take it for granted. It's like something I've dreamed of, I've wanted so badly. So it's like the season right now is a sprint, and I'm in the sprint mode.
So cool. So cool, man. It's been a pleasure to witness it. I'm so grateful for you welcoming me in here. And I feel like I said, that this is what Apple must have felt like in the early days, or what Tesla felt like. There is an undeniable wave of energy that the entire world, I believe your product will be in every gym in the world. And it will be odd if it's not similar to a sauna, but you're creating this category and you're doing it with such intention and the right approach. And you guys are going fast, but you guys are so meticulous about every detail. And it's so remarkable to witness in person. I was walking around the facilities getting chills on my body because I feel like I'm being a part of history in some sense. So thank you so much.
It's great to see it through your eyes and appreciate, what you're sharing in the world and coming out and having this convo. And now we're going to plunge in sauna. I
can't wait. I like to end these podcasts with a challenge.
Cool.
A challenge points to the place in your heart you believe someone should take this conversation and actually do something with it. Does a challenge come to mind other than going in a cold plunge? Because that is something everybody should experience. But
I challenge. Let's go for a week. Something manageable. I think that's a time that our brains can wrap our head around. The first person you wake up to in the morning, can you send a thoughtful note to?
That's beautiful. Ryan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny.
Where can we send people to connect with you?
Me, mostly on Instagram, Ryan A. Duey, and then, plunge.com is the company. So check us out.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. It's great.
Both cameras died.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Were they not plugged in?
No, they were.
Oh.
Well, they weren't plugged in during the episode, but we got the first hour and a half. I'm sure.
We got the GoPros.
Yeah.
If we need to.